Hello, I'm Frank Caruso, producer of Oregon Life, and welcome to a brand new episode. Solargraphy, solographer, that is Laurie, and she has a deep passion for creating these images. She has over 120 cameras around the country right now. And we got a special treat for you. She's going to show you how to build your own solography camera. Stay tuned for this episode of Oregon Life.
Hello, my name is Laurie Kutil, and solography is a form of pinhole photography, but it's a little bit different in the fact that you use photo paper and not film. And this form of photography is not very old. It's only 22 years old. It was invented November of 2000. The very first solography photos were published. They called the project Solaris. That was when the first pictures were produced, solography style. But they didn't keep this knowledge to themselves. They shared it all over the world and invited anyone else who wants to learn how. As for myself, I discovered it last spring in 2021. And a friend of mine had taken a photography class, and she did a solography as part of her class, and I was fascinated. I had to learn how to do this. So the first thing I did was search the internet for websites with solography photos, search YouTube for tutorials, and I found both. On May 13 of 21, I constructed my very first camera out of an Arizona tea can. So I then progressed to soup cans, which are made of steel and much stronger. And from there, I went even further. The animals were still poking the pinhole, and water was getting in from rain. So the next step was to put the piece of glass over the pinhole. That was my eureka moment. The longest I've exposed one of my cameras is 13 months. From December to July. The line at the very top is the first day of summer. This camera was installed at the Forevertron at Dr. Evermore's art park. I put the camera in a truck that was right across from it. And the camera sat there in summer when I finally arrived to pick it up. As you see, the first day of summer is at the very top, and then the sun starts to work its way down again. The joy I get from doing this kind of photography called solography, I've always wanted to take pictures that were of extreme long duration. This was it. I learned how to do this, and the joy is having a successful photo. I don't always have a successful photo. Sometimes I have to start over. But persistence often pays off, and it has in many cases for me. You just keep trying, keep making your pinhole smaller. And for me, the game changer was the glass in front of the pinhole. I wasn't getting any more flooded cameras with a ruined picture. It isn't happening anymore. Many people have asked me how I build a camera. Well, I'm going to show you how. All right, let's begin. This is a film canister here. You can buy those online in bulk. And I already did this to reduce time, but I use a box cutter to cut a hole in the film canister in order to apply the pinhole to. So, and these are my microscope slides that I use to cover the pinhole to protect it from water. Think of it as a deluxe model. And just a regular glass cutter for cutting it. And I have a template to cut paper into the appropriate width. I use these bigger pieces, half of a slide, for larger ones like soup cans. And on the flip side, I can cut them in thirds. I use those for my film canisters. It makes your glass last a lot longer. So we will begin by making a pinhole, and I have a box where I store a bunch of, I pre-cut aluminum cans into pinhole size pieces here. And I use a beading needle, the smallest needle I can find, in order to make the hole. And right here is my needle, very small and thin. And what I have to do is poke a hole into the aluminum. I do a motion like this to poke the hole. And then when I feel it come through the other side, which I am now, like this, what I do then is take a file and very gently smooth the rough edge. There's a rough edge in there from where I poke the hole. And then I poke it one more time just to, because sometimes when you do that, it covers up the hole again. So the hole's now finished, very small, with a beading needle. You can get that at a craft store. So now what we're going to do is put the pinhole on the canister. So what I do is get my aluminum tape. This is my go-to for affixing, not only sealing the camera after the paper's inside, I also use it to put my pinholes on. I find it doesn't come loose either. I found it's the very best possible tape to use to put your pinholes on. Now what I have to do is look inside to make sure the hole is centered in the middle of the square hole that I cut. On the edge of the aluminum here, I tape it on all 4 sides. I've learned I should go long a little bit just to make sure it, you don't skimp on the tape. You make sure you have plenty of tape to hold it on to make sure it doesn't come loose during time of exposure. So the top, be very careful not to get it anywhere near the pinhole. It's in the center between the top and the bottom. And then get both sides on either side here. Now the pinhole is right there. The next step is to put the piece of glass on. What I do then is cut a wider piece like this. And then I cut it in half. Now the tape is wide enough to go on either side of the piece of glass. I pre-cut a piece of glass to put on the pinhole. I cut it in thirds. Here's the piece of glass. Make sure it's clean. Have a lens cleaner. Otherwise, you're going to be getting a speck of dust in your picture for 6 months. So carefully on the edges, hold on to it. Make sure It's flat against the pinhole to avoid reflection. The glass will keep the camera from getting wet. So holding it on, I'll get one side attached, then the other. Here's the other piece of tape here. And now we'll put the other side on. And then over the top, and one thing I want to emphasize, just keep a wide amount of space around the pinhole. Otherwise, if your tape is too close to the pinhole, it's going to see it. These cameras have a very wide angle, about 170 degrees. It sees more than you think it will, so keep a wide amount of space around the pinhole. And I leave the bottom of the camera open as a vent. You don't want to completely seal it off, because if it's a humid day, when you put the camera together, you're going to end up having moisture inside that's going to freeze and deposit itself on your negative. So leave a little vent open on the bottom. So now I will demonstrate getting the piece of paper inside, the photo paper. You kind of want to have white gloves. You want to wear gloves when you do this. You don't want to put fingerprints on your photo paper. You can find these gloves at a drugstore. You can, they're for that purpose. So get a piece of paper. Now, normally you would not be doing it in a room with regular light. You would be doing it in a room with a dark light. I use a room with red light bulbs that I got from the hardware store, red LEDs, and that way you won't expose your paper prematurely. And as you see, the paper is stored in a black bag. So we're going to cut ourselves a piece of paper to fit inside the camera. And let's see here, I've got to find a nice size piece. I keep my scraps too, by the way, because I like to use them for testing cameras, for, just to test them. I don't want to use a nice piece of paper for like a very short exposure. So I have a template that I created in order to make the paper the proper size. If you make it too high, you're going to squish the paper when you put the cover on the film canister. So I have a template here to make it the proper dimensions. All right, and then put the rest back under cover again. All right, now we're going to put it in. Make sure you put the paper in correctly. The shiny side is the part that's exposed. The dull side is the back. Don't put it in wrong, otherwise your picture won't turn out. So you very gently bend it like so. And then insert it into the camera like this, making sure that you don't cover up your pinhole. Tweak it into position here. You can take the glove off now, and this is what it looks like on the inside. Now that there's paper in it, we have to cover it. So I keep the electrical tape handy. This is what you use to cover it. You make a little piece, fold it under so you can peel it off easily, and keep it covered right away now that there's paper inside. So I use a wide variety of tapes in order to cover my cameras. I got camouflage, beige, the standard gray I use quite a bit too, and black and white. Those are my most used colors, but I have other colors also that I didn't bring today, but your hardware stores will have about every color you could want. The key is disguise. You want to make sure your camera is not visible. And if also possible, put them up high. I have a step ladder to put my cameras up high to keep out of reach. So the last step is putting paper on the camera. And today we're going to be using what I call medium brown or rust brown. You cut up. This is a very nice pair of Fisker's non-stick scissors. The tape won't stick to your scissors. Good stuff. So I cover the camera all the way around. I'll just do a little bit here for demonstration. And there's one more step I need to show you. You got to really seal this camera tight to prevent the weather from getting in or animals from gnawing on it. And what I'm going to do is take the tape and go around the rim. See this right here? Sealing around the outside like so. Fold it in. It's going to completely seal this camera from the outside elements. That's not quite long enough, but that's okay. We'll just cut off a little bit more and we'll finish sealing this up. Also, another tip for you, I use cable ties to attach many of my cameras, but there's also another item that I use if it isn't possible to do that. If you're putting it on a mostly smooth surface, what I use for sticky, I don't use tape. I did in the beginning, but I've learned better. You can buy this at the hardware store too. It's called alien tape. This stuff sticks like the dickens. It's clear and you can remove it from the surface once you're finished with your project. It sticks things up really well. I've had cameras stick up for 8 months, a year. As long as no one disturbs it, it's going to stay up. So what we're going to do is go install a camera next. Before you install your camera, just check out different locations on your surface to make sure it's in the right spot. And for me, the best way to do this is with a small action camera. The angle is 170 degrees, which is actually about the same as your Solargraphy camera. So it'll give you a pretty good idea of whether or not the picture is capturing what you want it to capture. So this is what I do. I make sure my camera's in photo mode. It does video and photo. What I do is hold it up, right up to the lens, and simulate it and take a picture. And from there, it will show you what the camera's seeing. And you can check right away to see if it's in the right spot. And since it is, we'll then work on installing it. While we're getting ready to install the camera we just assembled, and before we get started, I wanted to recommend to you, look for this brand of cable ties on the internet. I'll tell you why, because these cable ties will not break in the extreme cold that we have in our winters. I found that out installing cable ties I bought at the hardware store. They busted on me when it was like 20 degrees or less. You don't want that. I don't work for the company, but I recommend this brand. I've had really good results with it. So we will be installing the camera now, but with black ones of this same brand. You see right here is really ideal. You got the sun, you got the monument, you got all the elements you need to get a really good solography. So what you want to do, you generally want to try to get 2 sets of cable ties around your camera, one on the top and one on the bottom. That way it'll be very secure. Another plus with using these tie wraps, they have a metal gripper instead of a plastic one that's not going to break on you when you cinch the cable tie. These are awesome. So now I cinch it up nice and tight, and make sure you're facing the sun like this. And then I get my second one. See, this is why I make the pieces of glass only with cutting the slide into thirds. That way you got some space on the top and the bottom to secure your camera, and you don't want to put any pressure on the glass, otherwise it'll break. Now we'll cinch that up. Oh, this looks good. This looks good. And my pair of scissors to snip the ends. And here's another thing. If you get permission to put up cameras, don't leave a mess. Always pick up your debris when you install or take them down. I do. You got to leave a good impression on the people that let you put up the cameras, otherwise they won't want you back. So we are ready to remove the shutter. This is our shutter piece of electrical tape. The picture begins now. As of today, I currently have over 120 cameras installed all over the country, some of them by friends who don't live here. The farthest one of all is in South Dakota. If you'd like to learn more about solography, or if you'd like me to install a camera at your place of choice, you can reach me at photostudent09@gmail.com. And thank you for watching Oregon Life.